Hello everyone, in this video I want to talk about near-death experiences, how they have the potential to completely change your life, and how to handle these situations. There are moments in life when we find ourselves in a near-miss situation, one that could have been extremely devastating. Witnessing these events can have a lasting negative effect on you. I'm going to share my personal experience with near-death situations and how they drastically changed my perspective on life, helping me understand a few important lessons. It all started when I was in high school. I was commuting with my father and I was the one driving the motorcycle. We were on the main road in the evening. I had taken that same route countless times before, so it felt like just another regular day, but that day was different. As I neared an intersection, a tree suddenly broke and fell directly onto us. I was completely frozen in the moment. There was no time to react. The timing was such that we couldn't avoid getting hit by the fallen tree. Miraculously, I swerved the motorcycle towards the edge of the tree where the branches were smaller, and we fell safely to the ground. By the grace of God, nothing happened to us. Not only did we avoid the tree, but the traffic behind us was far enough away that there was no risk of a rear-end collision. In fact, there was no traffic at all at that moment. It's very rare for that road to be so empty. We quickly got back on our feet and saw that a crowd had gathered to see what had happened. Everyone calmed down within a few minutes, and thankfully no one was hurt. One person came running towards us, telling us he had been under the tree and would have been squashed if he hadn't been wearing a helmet. He could have been the victim of that incident too. That was my first real brush with panic. The second experience came later, while I was commuting to college. There were several times when I felt that if I had made just one small mistake while riding, I could have been involved in a serious accident. The feeling of having a near miss is extremely unsettling, and it happened to me often, mainly due to the reckless driving in India. Once, while driving my car with my cousin, I turned my head to check the rear seat. At that moment, my cousin yelled at me to look forward. I suddenly realized the car was veering off the road and heading toward the divider. Thankfully, nothing happened, but the event disturbed me for 2 days. I still think about what could have happened if I had been driving alone. The reason I'm sharing these experiences is that they changed my life. They led me to a realization about myself and how I had been living. I was blind to a lot of important truths before this. Earlier, I thought of myself as the most unfortunate person in the world, even though things weren't really that bad. I complained about everything in my life. Even though I had every kind of resource without effort and never experienced a lack of privileges, I became choosy and always had unrealistic expectations. I acted like a child, dissatisfied with what I had, always wanting more. As I got older and faced some minor hardships, which honestly weren't that painful, I started to feel unhappy. I became frustrated with the fact that life involved any kind of struggle. Being lazy and not putting in any hard work, I didn't value what I had and wasn't willing to put in the effort to earn anything. I complained to God, questioning why life had to be so difficult. The smallest problems irritated me, and I assumed I was entitled to everything without effort. I didn't treat my parents with respect or care for them. I was only focused on my own desires, spending most of my time on my phone, scrolling through social media, or playing video games. I didn't appreciate the most precious things in my life, but all that changed. It started to shift when I began having near-death experiences. Well, more accurately, near-miss experiences. These events made me rethink my approach to life. It wasn't an immediate change, but when I was alone in my room, I started reflecting on those experiences. At first, I continued blaming God for what had happened to me, but then I started paying attention to the news stories of people who had suffered severe injuries or even lost their lives in accidents. That's when I realized how wrong I had been to criticize God for my life's challenges. I suddenly understood how fortunate I was. I hadn't experienced anything truly terrible in my life, even though I had come so close. My anxiety had been the only thing causing me distress after those events. The most intense experience came when I was admitted to the hospital due to a severe fever. I had to stay there for treatment, and my parents were the only ones who supported me through that time. My father stayed with me overnight, and I was drenched in sweat from the fever. The next day, I started to feel better, but in the afternoon, I had a complete mental breakdown. As I looked out of the hospital window, the realization of how much I had messed up my life hit me hard. I panicked, feeling completely alone. In that moment, I realized that without my parents, I would have been utterly helpless. The thought of being alone in the world was terrifying. I finally understood the value of the things I had in my life. I cried that day, realizing how much my parents had invested in me, enduring countless hardships to ensure I had opportunities. I had been wasting their efforts and adding pain to their lives. I realized how fortunate I was not to face the serious problems others do, and how many things could have gone wrong. It felt like a higher power had been protecting me all along, and it was my own actions that had made me vulnerable. At that moment, I made a decision. I would stop complaining and stop having a negative perspective on life. It wasn't an immediate change, but I took the first step. I began to monitor my emotions and thoughts every day, and whenever a negative thought or feeling came up, I would consciously replace it with positive ones. Whenever I felt hopeless or unlucky, I reminded myself of the many things going well in my life. I reflected on how much worse things could be and how much good I still had. This approach helped reduce negative thoughts to a minimal level. This technique is extremely practical. Over time, things started to change. I was able to get out of bed with more ease, and I began to feel more motivated. Episodes of depression and panic decreased. I became more active and enthusiastic. My motivation to do things grew, and I stopped avoiding tasks. I started engaging with my family more and reconnecting with friends. From my experience, I've learned that emotions, whether positive or negative, have a multiplier effect. If you're stuck in negativity, your experiences will become negative, reinforcing that mindset. The same goes for positivity. The key is not to be passive in your life. If you experience negativity, take steps to eradicate it. Don't just sit idly by. This is your life, and you are not here to live in a state of unhappiness. You're wasting your life if you don't seek happiness. Since my realization, things have been getting better, and I'm grateful for it. My life is slowly falling into place. I'm still working on improving things, but it's a process, and that's okay. I'm sharing my story because I believe there may be others who feel the same way I once did. If you can relate to my journey, I hope this video can help you make a positive change in your life. One thought, one idea, or one piece of advice can change your life's direction entirely. I've experienced it myself, and my life was transformed by someone else's thought shared on the internet. Now, I'm returning the favor by spreading the message.